Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on owlscoop.com. You already know.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. owlscoop.com's podcast is Season 8, Episode 7. I'm John DeCarlo, joined by Caden Steele. Javon Evans is going to be with us in a little bit and making his triumphant return to The Scoop, Kyle Gauss.
I was only going for like 2 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't been gone that long. I'm here. I'm excited to be here.
Going to be at the game Saturday. It's a big deal.
Well, they'll be giving away that I've been mailing this in for the first 2 weeks of the season.
Or you've been playing the role of a father to a second child. That's awesome.
I handled our coverage on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, you saw an Instagram post from the Owl Scoop Instagram page for the first time in 6 months. That was me. I'm out here posting every day.
Stories have been active, but yeah.
Famous number 7s.
Ron Jaworski.
Mike Vick.
Caden, what do you have?
Stewart.
Chester Stewart, yeah.
Trying to think of someone. I guess Jeff Garcia.
Jeff Garcia.
Did he wear 7 with the Eagles?
I think so.
I just remember he did. I just remember like right after he had like that improbable like run with him when he took over, they were just selling shirts in the stores. They said like Jeff Garcia, a fighter fights. Okay.
I remember that. Jeff Garcia. I feel like we're forgetting a bunch of important ones, but
Carmelo New York.
who?
Carmelo when he was the Knicks.
Oh yeah.
No way. Mickey Mantle.
Yeah. The Mick.
Pistol Pete. Yeah. Carmelo. Vic. Pudge Rodriguez. Yeah, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of 7s.
Chester Stewart's a good pull.
Randall Cunningham when he was with the Vikings.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 12 the Eagles, 7 with the Vikings.
Right. Here's a little thing. A future all-star center fielder that took an official visit to Temple for basketball.
Kenny Lofton?
Kenny Lofton.
Yeah.
And he fell asleep during practice and Cheney stopped recruiting him.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's a very good story. Got some good stuff to talk about this week, namely the fact that I don't want to call it the EJ Warner era because this is a week by week thing. He could, he come in, struggle against Rutgers. They could go in a different direction again. But nonetheless, he came in against Lafayette, helped lead the team to a win. So obviously we'll be recapping Temple's win over Lafayette, the first of the Stan Drayton era, previewing Rutgers. We've got some mailbag questions for you guys as well. But just impressions of the 30-14 win here. I mean, there's a lot to dissect. I know that EJ Warner is obviously the big story. I went back and rewatched the game. My wife and I were driving down to Kings Mountain, North Carolina to adopt a puppy, so I was not there in person. Caden was. Kyle was. What you look like you're going to say something, Kyle?
Where's Jagger Gardner from?
Oh, that's a good question.
Black Mountain?
Black Mountain. Yeah, it's not Kings Mountain.
Okay.
That's far away.
Yeah.
Little guy was worth it, though. It's hard to find Shih Tzus. It's hard to find those little guys. He's Bear's cute though. He's a good little guy. But
unrelated, you text me asking how much I paid for my dog like 7 years ago, and I told you how much, but then I didn't even tell you that you could just get a free dog from the pound. Like a week after I got Riggins, they were like, yeah, every dog's free. Like we're clearing the shelter.
Yeah.
Fiscal decisions.
How's Riggs doing?
He's regressing. I feel like.
Oh.
He eats crap more often. Pissing on the patio.
He's adjusting.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, Caden, you're just before we get into some of the nitty gritty elements of the game here. Again, a lot to dissect. Temple Stars, I hate to sound like a coach, a lot to clean up. But what are your general takeaways from what you saw on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the number one thing we have to start with is EJ Warner. Even if I want to pump the brakes a little bit on the whole EJ Warner hype that's circulating everywhere on Twitter and stuff, because albeit it was against Lafayette, but for a freshman coming in that I don't think any of us really expected to play this year, he looked poised, confident, accurate. I think he had a very good game versus, an FCS team that's not very good. So take it with some context. But I think that was my biggest takeaway, that he was a lot more ready than I expected him to be. But
I just put up a time as a flat circle background on Zoom.
Yeah, but I think Warner is going to, has a bright future here, potentially here at Temple. I think this Rutgers game could be where we finally get to see kind of where he's actually at. But I think he looked good. And I think at the end of the day, the answer came out that, I don't know how good EJ is going to be, but I know from that game, at least, he's better than D'Wan. He didn't hurt the team as much. D'Wan's really struggled in the first 2 weeks of the season. I think Temple has found their number one quarterback for this year. That would be kind of like the main takeaway I have offensively. I think defensively, they looked, better than that Duke game. I think they kind of, picked off where they started, where they played better in the second half of that Duke game. They got some pass rush. I thought Darian Varner looked good for a second straight week. Leighton Jordan looked good for a second straight week. And I think Lance Torrey made some plays as well there, you have some, encouragement, or you feel very encouraged, about that defensive line, I think, at least.
Kyle, is your time as a flat circle thing up there? Is that, I could be wrong here, is this time as a flat circle because it's a reach back to PJ Walker coming in? You're muted.
Land the plane, John. You got there. 2013, 2022. The parallels are starting to get a little uncanny, to be honest. It's similar stuff. Enter in 2013, you thought Connor Riley and then Juice Granger. You enter 2022, you thought D'Wan Mathis and maybe Quincy Patterson. Maybe it's EJ Warner. It's a new coaching staff. Another parallel. In 2013 was the last year of Rutgers, Louisville, all these big guys being in the conference. 2022, the last year of Cincinnati, UCF, Houston being in the conference. Things are starting to align. I'll echo a lot of what Caden said, which I think it's really early to think that, hey, Temple just found, a 4-year starter and a future NFL pro and EJ Warner. It was kind of uncanny, though, how much better the offense looked once it had, serviceable, if not good, quarterback play. I mean, I think some of the stuff, they kept it pretty simple for him. It was still, he had better wide receivers going up against an FCS opponent. But like we texted about a little bit this last week, the one thing that sticks out is that one play where he gets absolutely drilled and he hits, I forget if it's Jordan Smith or Jose Barbosa.
That was the Jordan Smith touchdown.
Jordan Smith, he hits him on a seam route and just stood in there a lot longer than, quite frankly, D'Wan Mathis wouldn't take that hit. D'Wan Mathis would have thrown the ball away before he sends the pressure on that. We have a year and a half worth of film now that shows that that's what D'Wan Mathis does when the pocket collapses. And with this offensive line, the pocket is not always going to be clean. So I think it's imperative that they have a quarterback that is making the right reads. Feels like a lot of the stuff he succeeds at was pre-snap. And yeah, it's encouraging. And if anything, it gives you something to watch and focus, because I feel like people were getting a little sick of the D'Wan Mathis saga.
Yeah, I know I'm not bringing any news here, but it's for D'Wan, it's just kind of a shame how quickly he went from north to south in that game. Now, again, one throw doesn't make a good game, but on that first drive, I mean, the throw to Barbone could not have been any better. It was right there. His feet were set, shoulders were set, makes a good throw. And then after that, it's just, I mean, the two fumbles, there was the drive where he missed the throw to Ian Stewart. Ball security's bad. He looks like a very unsure runner and a very unwilling runner. Again, easy for me to say. I have never played quarterback. I've never been hit before. But on both of those hits, they were kind of slightly harder arm tackles. Even that slide, when he went to go slide, he almost hurt himself. He just looked really sharp on that first throw, and then boom, just. And I think, Kyle, you can relate to this. We've covered a few different eras of Temple football. When you're covering a new coach, a new staff, a new season, it's just as important to listen to what they're saying and how they're saying it. And, again, we don't want to hype up EJ Warner to be his father, but I mean, every time Stan has talked about him, his eyes light up a little bit. He's ball placement's there. He's decisive. He knows where he wants to go with the ball. And it does sound like this has been brewing in practice. The only thing I can assume is that they did not think that Quincy Patterson had a good week of practice. I had a couple people text me why isn't Quincy Patterson in the game, other than me saying I'm not there? It's assuming he didn't practice well. But it's just D'Wan just really just fell off there, and he just really looked like he looked sharp on that first throw, and then just between the ball security, the poor throws, I wonder how many first team reps he got. EJ did heading into practice, but he ended up finishing 14 of 19 passing, 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jose Barbone had 8 catches for 118 yards. I think he looks like he's really progressed and looks sharp. Leighton Jordan had 2.5 sacks and has played 2 strong games to start the season, as has Jordan McGee. I think last week we talked about how there's some guys that look like they really belong and some guys that look like they're trying to just figure it out. I'm intrigued to see what happens with the line moving forward on that second touchdown, the one that Kyle was referencing, the throw to Jordan Smith, where EJ Warner stuck in there and took a hit. I don't know exactly who hit him, but by that point, Adam Klein was out of the game. We should note that he is, Stan said on Monday that he's day to day. I don't know what, Caden, I don't know if I missed it. Did they talk specifics on last Saturday about what's going on with Klein?
Yeah, they did not mention like the specific injury at all.
So you could see, and again, I'm not saying that Adam Klein and Isaac Moore have been perfect, but that I think the previous staff liked Jim Tuobadegu, the current staff likes him. So he was in there at right tackle when Adam Klein was out. Jim Tu got beat as far as we can see, unless maybe we're missing something with the assignment there. Jim Tu gets beat, pressure comes in, EJ stands in there, delivers a good ball. Granted, Jordan Smith was wide open, but it was a seam route, like Kyle said, where he still needed to stand in there and make the throw. Obviously against a much better Rutgers team this week, they're already kind of up against it. Rutgers is 2-0. They came from behind, beat Boston College. They did exactly what they should have done to a bad Wagner team. But Bryce Tolman started at left guard. Thought that was interesting because, Santa just praised. He said James Faminu played really well. And I don't know if he just had a bad week of practice, but Bryce Tolman started at left guard. Isaac Moore was at left tackle again. Rich Rodriguez was center. Wisdom Quarshie at right guard. Klein at right tackle again until he got hurt. Those guys are going to, again, have their hands full. I think we were texting about this, earlier this week, how good are Adam Klein and Isaac Moore? And Kyle made the point of like, well, you have to factor in what's going on in the interior of the offensive line. And then obviously, again, is he going to do this every week? No, but Devon Fox's 3 block punts, just refreshing to see anything happen on special teams again after a few years where it just had really almost kind of been de-emphasized. They really weren't going after kicks. I liked Kyle's tweet where he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that's a program record.
Which, when I tweet that, we talked about this. People didn't multiple people tweeted me like, what's the NCAA record? Like, if I couldn't find the Temple record, in hindsight, it's actually really easy to find the NCAA record, but I just put no effort or energy into anything like that. It is probably important to note that it was against Lafayette, right? And like Devon Fox's biggest skill there is speed. So like he has an athletic advantage over the team. But yeah, it's still impressive. I mean, they hadn't had a block punt since pre-Rod Gary. So the one thing, I mean, with Rutgers coming up, I don't know if we want to transition to that. The one thing they might kind of have going for them a little bit, Rutgers defensive line's not like world beaters. Like it's like there's the thing that concerns me the most about this game is Rutgers' offensive line is really good. They really shored it up with a lot of key transfers that they seem like they've hit on. Right. Their defensive line is not full of future NFL pros. They've been trying to kind of patch that together with Yufan Maje and Aaron Lewis from Michigan, and they really haven't had the success yet that you would expect. So that being said, Temple's offensive line, we knew it was a concern coming into the season. We'd kind of just assumed that eventually they would get it right because Chris Weasingham would eventually get it right, and maybe they will. But right now, it's kind of a rotating door at left guard, it seems, whether that's via injury or performance. And I feel like that trickles down to affect left tackle, and same with right guard and right tackle. And when you're throwing in guys that have never played center before to play center, like it gets hard.
And another thing that's interesting with Rutgers, again, they're in year 3 of the second Greg Schiano era. And I don't know. I mean, Rutgers fans might feel similarly or dissimilarly about this. It seems like they're starting to progress and they're on track to where Schiano wants them to be. Again, they came from behind to beat Boston College. We're out of Wagner. Noah Vedral is probably going to be out again, right? So they're playing 2 quarterbacks. And and Gavin Wimsatt and Evan Simon. Simon was 10 of 12 passing last week for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wimsatt is really dangerous as a runner. He's a former 4-star recruit, had 62 yards on 6 carries last week, threw a touchdown, also threw a pick. So he's had some up and down moments. But as Kyle mentioned there,
I'd look at their week 1 stats. I think that's a weakness for them too.
Yeah, it is. Now for them, like you said, they have a pretty good offensive line that's protecting them. So, it'll be a big step forward if guys like Leighton Jordan, Darian Varner, maybe a Trey Thomas makes something happen off the edge against a much better offensive line. I think I don't want to say it's their only shot at upsetting Rutgers, but it sure would help them if they can get something going early on in disrupting something there behind the line of scrimmage. How do you guys feel about Temple secondary going up against Josh Youngblood and Aaron Cruikshank? And again, I wasn't there last week. Dominic Hill, Caden, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Temple, I would not be feeling pretty good about this matchup coming in. Look, Jalen McMurray, we all saw that one player where he closed on the sideline, broke up the pass. I think he's got a lot of potential, but he's still a redshirt freshman. And then, at that cornerback 2 position, they keep rotating guys in. We've seen Elijah Clark, we've seen Dominic Hill, and I don't think they've truly found that answer there. My feeling is that Cameron Ruiz is eventually going to take that spot again, when or if he is healthy this year. That hopefully, for them, he can step in because I think he would be more of a suitable option. But going to this week, you're playing, 2 really good wide receivers, especially with Cruikshank and Youngblood. And I think it's going to be a tough matchup, especially if they get time. One of the quarterbacks, whoever starts with Rutgers, gets time in the pocket. It could be a tough day for Temple.
I'm going to say this knowing that I'm setting myself up for them to drop like 130 yards against Temple. But when did Josh Youngblood and Cruikshank become Devontae Smith and AJ Brown?
They're not.
Josh Youngblood, when he transferred in last year, couldn't crack the depth chart because he was so bad at routes that they put him exclusively at kick return. Maybe he's gotten a little better. Clearly he is. If he's starting in the Big Ten, so he's gotten a little bit better. But like their receiving core is a lot worse than it was last year. Sean Ryan, former Temple, prodigy Sean Ryan, who went to West Virginia and came back, is now back in the fold. But and they lost Bo Melton. They're Rutgers, we're talking a little about how they're progressing, and they are progressing in the sense of their program is progressing and they're more respectable, all this. Offensive talent wise, they're worse than they were last year.
Yeah.
Like they lost Isaiah Pacheco, who has 61 yards for the Chiefs on Sunday, granted in mop up. They lost Bo Melton, who I think got waived. I don't think he's in the NFL anymore, at least right now. Like their quarterback position is worse than it was last year. Gavin Wimsatt, there's a reason he ended up at Rutgers. Like I get that he's really young. Like he enrolled when he was still in high school. He left high school midseason, enrolled at enrolled at Rutgers and played last year. But he's young. Like he'll be better in 3 years. There's a reason Noah Vedral keeps winning that job despite having limitations himself. I've seen worse Temple teams compete with better Rutgers teams, as well. Say back to that 2013 season, they lead that entire game against Rutgers, a future bowl team Rutgers, and then they lose on a Gary Nova thing. So it's not probable by any stretch of the imagination. I think Temple's going to be a 20-point dog before this is all over, but it's not impossible. Like I think they need to protect the ball. They need to force a turnover for the first time this season. They haven't forced a single turnover 2 games in. That's concerning.
And I would agree with you. I mean, again, I do think their offensive talent took a step back. I'm thinking more, and again, I'm not trying to compare him to Devontae Smith and guys like that too, but like they are, Cruikshank and Youngblood are fast. The secondary, I do think that you can see flashes of why they like Jalen McMurray. Dominic Hill, didn't have a good game against Duke. I don't know. Again, from week to week, do these guys build confidence off of little moments, and are we having a different conversation about them a couple of weeks from now?
I think he played better against Lafayette than Elijah Clark did against Duke. At least in that sense.
I mean, how do you guys feel against them? They've got a couple of good backs. They've run the ball well. Kyle Monangai, Al Shadi Salam combined. Again, 127 yards and 2 touchdowns in the win over Wagner. A lot of their, not that those are super inflated stats, but it's a 66-7 game. I would agree. You look at what they did a little bit more against BC, but there's another test for the defense. Kyle, what do you think they have to, I know it sounds like the cliche question, but you make some good points about Rutgers. They are good. They are progressing, but you're not also putting them on a pedestal. What would, if I say to you, Temple wins this game Saturday and upsets Rutgers, it is because of what?
They force turnovers and they protect the pocket. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball super well, just because they haven't proven that they can run the ball against anybody really yet. They ran the ball in the first half against Lafayette and then peeled back. I think they just need to be aggressive on defense. I think they're going to get burnt a couple times just because of that speed that we talked about. And other than maybe D'Wan Hawkins, I'm not sure if there's that fast of a guy in at cornerback's room right now. But I think this is going to come down. If you can copy and paste what EJ Warner did against Lafayette and he does it against Rutgers, then they have a fighting chance. But if he looks like an 18-year-old that looks eye to eye with me height wise, then this could be a long day for them.
Caden, what about a player Saturday that we're maybe not talking about that you think needs to have a good game for them to win?
That's tough, to think. I think honestly, at the end of that game, we saw that throw from Warner to Jordan Smith. Why not give someone that he's comfortable with over the middle to give him a safe target? I think if Jordan Smith can have a big game on offense, to go along with Jose Barbeau and to go on with Adonica Sanders, I think that could give him that third option in the offense where, maybe he's confident in, more in the pocket, making more of those throws if he feels he's got that safe guy, across the middle.
We have talked about him, but I'll just say Leighton Jordan is the most important person on defense for this team. Whether it's him or Trey Thomas or Jake Collins, the fact that Temple gets pressure from kind of like a non-conventional way, like they're not expecting necessarily, the defensive ends to get there, gives them like a fighting chance against this line, I would say. So, I mean, Leighton Jordan's looked the part is what this comes down to. Like Leighton Jordan is the type of guy where if he keeps on this trajectory, then that might be a one and doneer situation where he's been sticking around, finally has that boom season, and then declares or does whatever he does.
Ian Stewart also worth mentioning. Again, I know we talked about him catching that touchdown pass, but there's a guy, again, it's 2 weeks in, but so far it looks like they have kind of hit on him in the transfer portal. Stan Drayton was very praiseworthy of him on Monday. He said he just always seems to be in, again, I'm paraphrasing here. Always seems to be in the right place at the right time, and does give him another element there.
Real quick with him, one, they've always been lacking size at that position.
Yeah,
it says Brandon Mack left. Two, I think we kind of forget how good of a recruit he was. Like he had like the offers you would want a kid in Michigan to have: Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. To the point that you're like, okay, this was like, and they didn't get him, 4 years later when he hadn't succeeded at Michigan State. They got him young, but he had barely been at Michigan State. So that's a building block for this program as well.
Let's before we head over to the mailbag to answer a couple of mailbag questions, again, just something to keep an eye on the basketball recruiting front. I talked to Zion Stanford from West Catholic, and he'd made his official visit to Temple, visited Boston College officially, and then was supposed to wrap up things with an official visit to Drexel, I believe, at some point this week. I believe, from a couple of people I've talked to, that the Drexel is probably a distant third at this point.
I imagine a midweek official visit to Drexel involves like a lot of conference rooms. Like here, this is how you would book this if you wanted to have like a breakout session.
A lot of conference rooms. Maybe Drexel's got really nice conference rooms.
You want to take a photo with the dragon? That's all we have on the itinerary today.
His name's Mario, right? Isn't he Mario the Dragon?
Yes. Marlo?
The Dragon? Caden is dipping out to class. Caden, thank you.
Thank you.
Have fun. See you Saturday, bud.
Bye, Caden. Mario the Magnificent.
Yeah. I don't know.
It feels like, I really have a joke there. I was going to make some joke about, Mario Chalmers or something like that. Mario the Magnificent.
Mario the Magnificent Dragon. So could have some news, just something to keep an eye on there on the basketball recruiting front. We'll probably be talking more basketball in the not too.
That feels like it's wrapping up soon, right? Didn't he tell you he wouldn't make a decision?
Yeah, didn't give a specific date, but again, if he ends up choosing Temple, I think it's a really solid get. Yeah, another guy a local guy that Aaron McKee is identifying early with. I can't say a super early offer, but a guy that is a different player than High Sierra Miller, but a local guy that is gettable and a guy that keeps improving and was not like a local 5-star recruit that's just destined to leave the area, but had a really nice summer and would probably be a really good get for him. So yes, that could be wrapping up pretty soon. A couple of mailbag questions here to close things out. First one is from the screen name GLMPA. These are from our owlscoop.com subscribers. What chance is there that we see Quincy Patterson under center sometime in the season? I don't know if GLMPA is forgetting that he played against Duke, or if the question is more like, will we see him again? Again, I know it sounds like the safe thing to say. I mean, you never know. I don't know what happens if EJ Warner goes in and just is completely overwhelmed and gets, again, like Kyle said, I don't want to make Rutgers, defensive front to be like, what Georgia was doing last year or anything like that. But let's say he goes out and really, really struggles and is just, or he gets dinged up or something like that. Do they put D'Wan back in there? Do they put Quincy Patterson in? I don't know. Again, it's kind of easy to look at the couple of throws that Quincy Patterson had against Duke and say, woof, because they weren't great. I want to be mindful of time and place. They're trailing by a lot. There's not much that you can do at that point, and you might have been trying way too hard to make something happen. But I do think it's a little telling, and we don't have any reason to believe that he was hurt headed into last week. So either EJ Warner just wowed everybody in practice and literally just kind of just rose atop the depth chart or ahead of Patterson on the depth chart to say, hey, if D'Wan's struggling, we're going with EJ. But obviously wasn't playing well enough, Patterson that is, in practice to get in there. So again, you saw the spot time and mop-up duty at Duke. Nothing too impressive there. Again, I don't know what he could have made happen, but a couple of the throws that he uncorked were not good. Were not good throws. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that we could see him under center sometime this season again. But I think that's if they see that EJ Warner is a little overwhelmed and we think, what, we don't want to break this kid's confidence. Other than that, I don't see it. I don't know. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things to consider. One is that, statistically, the odds of a quarterback staying and taking every snap for the remaining 10 games is improbable, right? So if that's the case and you're thinking, okay, another quarterback's going to have to come in at some point, this isn't anything sourced or anything. It's kind of me just reading the tea leaves to an extent. I would assume that D'Wan Mathis is probably gone after this year, one way or the other. Like you just lost, assuming that EJ Warner continues to start and you lost your job to a true freshman, and now you're going to be entering like your fourth year of college, you're probably not staying at Temple for that. If that's the case, and you're working under that assumption, because at this point it's just an assumption, because players aren't allowed to enter the transfer portal again until December 15th or whenever the next window is, which is a drastic change from the last couple of years. If you're working under that assumption, would you rather put the guy who has 1 foot out the door back in, or would you rather put the guy Quincy Patterson who's already transferred twice, has to basically stay? Like, would you rather get him kind of exposed to it? I'm with you that I wouldn't really glean anything from that second half against Duke, where it's kind of just going through the motions to an extent on the offense. And yeah, he made some bad throws and he looked inaccurate at times, but we don't know. Like, we don't know what the game plan was. We don't know what their outs were. We don't really know what they were expecting from him in that scenario. I would agree that my gut tells me he probably just had a really bad week of practice. And EJ Warner, who Cade Warner, his brother, gave a quote to Mike Jensen this morning in the article where he said that EJ was disappointed that he wasn't named the starter after fall practice. So that tells me that EJ Warner thought he did well enough in fall practice to say, like, hey, look, I deserve to have this job. I looked the part. That I mean, I don't know where I was really going with that last point. I think it just tells me that he has the confidence and has shown it so far that this wasn't just like a 1 week fluke thing where it was, oh, he got high and we caught lightning in a bottle. In EJ Warner's mind, he's been doing it for 2 months now. Yeah.
Well, that dovetails nicely into our next mailbag question here from the screen named Iwa. What is the backstory concerning EJ Warner coming to Temple? So Cade Warner had redshirted at Nebraska in 2017. That was Danny Langsdorf's last season coaching there for the Cornhuskers. And Warner's first time meeting with Langsdorf was during that workout. I mean, that's, Caden had that detail in his story back in January when EJ committed to Temple. So, I would assume that, we'll learn more about this throughout the year. I mean, like, the relationship started there, the connection started there. And
beyond that, Langsdorf was Cade Warner's primary recruiter coming out of high school.
Yeah. So like, the family connection was there.
Yeah, you're talking like 7 years of knowing that family at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder why maybe Colorado wasn't sniffing around with them a little bit prior to that, but I don't know what their recruiting class looked like or their scholarship distribution. Maybe they were already full at that position.
Yeah, it's this might sound like the general question that we kind of skipped over earlier, but like, I mean, how do you think you look Saturday? I mean, we talked about the 2 touchdown passes, which were obviously huge. They needed to win a game. They need to get some confidence going. How do you think he looked just overall out there? He didn't have too many incompletions. Again, I know we keep saying this a million times over. They have to play who they have to play. It came against Lafayette, but he did look fairly decisive with the ball and fairly technically sound. I mean, how do you think he looked just overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think he looked the part. He even factored, like his stats would have been better if Jakari Norwood dropped an open ball that would have gotten them an extra, 15, 20 yards. I think the easy comparison that maybe like a cynic would make would be, okay, is this just Justin Lynch against Akron? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, okay, like a freshman came in, he just kind of did the right things, he got the ball in players' hands. And that's really it didn't look the case. Like it doesn't look like they're restricting the playbook or anything with him on that. I mean, the one thing I kind of saw, and Pro Football Focus backed up on this, was they took shots. Like he completed 3 or 4 balls that were thrown for more than 20 yards. So they were taking shots downfield. He was 6 or 7 on passes of 10 or more yards downfield. Yeah. So they were taking shots down with him. He looked the part. It's one of those things where I think, like, if he could have waved a magic wand and all of a sudden he was 6'4", he's probably not at Temple. Like Kurt Warner's son, 6'4", with kind of like the poise and the pre-snap ability that he has, and the arm to, like, he doesn't have a phenomenal arm. He doesn't have the strongest arm of the team or anything like that, but he has a good enough arm to play at college, to play at this level. With that skill set and that pedigree, and if he was 6'4", then he's probably at Arizona or Arizona State, and we're going from here. But he's 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, whatever they want to list him at, and I think it went about as well as could be. It's pretty much like what PJ Walker looked like when he played against Louisville that 2013 year, where you're like, okay, they lost the game, or they won the game against Lafayette, but against Louisville, they lost the game. He looked the part. You can see the progression. You can see where, like, he could be, and that's what I saw from EJ Warner, was you could see the building blocks that make him better.
Yeah, I recorded earlier with Adam on the Believe in Temple football podcast that we do, and I said, okay, I want to revisit this with you. Height, physical dimensions for a quarterback. And Adam was about 6 feet, 6'1", playing at Temple. Didn't have a long NFL career, but he got to a preseason camp and played in a preseason game with the Eagles. PJ Walker has an NFL career as a backup. I think you'd probably give PJ maybe an inch over EJ, and is probably stockier, might have a stronger arm. But I asked him, is the size, obviously anybody could say, like you said, if he's 6'3", 6'4", probably doesn't end up at Temple. If you're 6'3", 6'4", and you have a cannon for an arm, obviously that's going to help you. But do you think that the him being an 18-year-old kid, and if he looks, again, he does look closer to like 5'11" out there. I asked Adam, do you think that's a little bit overblown? He said, yeah, I might be a little biased here, but yeah, I think it's a little overblown. You just have to find open throwing lanes. You got to put the ball where it is. It'll be interesting to see how things go for him. I mean, like, it's easy. And again, these other guys that were, these names I'm about to mention are more accomplished. Stetson Bennett at Georgia, 5'11". If you want to look more I don't want to say localized, a more American Athletic Conference example of a shorter guy who was playing really well before he got hurt, Mackenzie Milton. Very similar build. So it can be done. So
yeah, but counterpoint to that is I also just saw Baker Mayfield have to answer 10 minutes of questions about why he's so short and he throws the ball into defensive lineman's hands. So, like, there is a disadvantage.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Can you overcome that disadvantage? Sure, absolutely. But there's a reason that prototypical quarterbacks are not 5'10". Like, yeah. I mean, even in this league, like, defensive linemen are big boys. Like, Temple's actually kind of smaller on defensive linemen with its 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" defensive linemen. There are some 6'6" defensive linemen out there that can make things hard for 5'10" quarterbacks.
Absolutely. One last mailbag question here from Mike TB31 on the message board. When are you getting Kurt Warner on the podcast? I'm sure Kevin Nagandi can help make it happen. I don't know. Haven't talked to Kurt Warner yet.
That kind of tells me to think about this a little bit. I don't know. Like, a lot of times you hear, like, okay, when they make that move, like, okay, we told EJ on Thursday that, like, to be ready, there could be a package for him and stuff like that. If it was known, and this is no disrespect to Cade Warner, If it was known that Elijah Warner was probably going to make his collegiate debut, you would think his parents would have been there instead of the Kansas State game that Cade Warner played in sparingly. So if that's the case, like maybe this really was just kind of like a gut decision, whether it's from Danny Langsdorf or Stan Drayton of like, look, it's a game that we'll probably win regardless, just because at that point, you know, they're running the ball down their throat. They haven't been able to stop him. Let's just see what the kid looks like. Like worst case scenario, he looks overwhelmed. We redshirt him, and then no harm, no foul. So maybe it really was just kind of like, look, trust your gut on this one. He went out there, he looked the part, and now the narrative of things. It's also important to note that Stan Drayton has not named him the starter.
No, he said he did not name him the starter on Monday. And I think, and again, if I were Stan Drayton, I'd probably do the same thing. I think Stan it's not that he's not praising people. Like he's praised Shakari Norwood, he's praised Ian Stewart, he's praised EJ Warner, but he said, you know, he talked about the things that he did well in Saturday's game. And he said, yes, he has taken he's taking first team reps in practice this week. He didn't say EJ's our guy for the rest of the year. EJ is definitively starting on Saturday. He is atop the depth chart. I would be mildly surprised if he doesn't start. But I don't know. I think that Stan has been cautious about how he praises people, how he criticizes people, because he is a first-time head coach, and he knows that I'm sure behind closed doors, like the classic thing to say is for fans to say, ask the tough questions. How come Stan Drayton didn't rip his team more? Blah, 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 blah. I get that, but the coaches aren't here to rip players to make you, the fan, feel better, and then you fall asleep on a Saturday night or a Friday night whenever you are watching a game. But I think he has been very procedural and very careful about that. I can't say I know Kurt Warner. I've never met him. Kevin Gandhi.
You were talking about you grew up right next to him. Didn't you guys share a room?
My brother, yeah.
My brother looks a lot like Kurt Warner.
He does. My brother does look a lot like Kurt Warner. This is just a wholehearted guess on my part. Kurt Warner strikes me as the type of guy who would not, maybe I'm wrong, all of a sudden start like hitting the media circuit. Like let's say EJ Warner has a solid to very solid game against Rutgers, even if they lose Saturday. For a guy that's a Hall of Famer and a Hall of Famer for a reason, I wonder if Kurt Warner would be very judicious about what he does, how often he's talking to reporters about his son, because he knows how thin a line there is between success and failure. So, hey, Mike TB31, if we can get Kurt Warner on our podcast, I'll never turn that down. That would be awesome. Be great to have a Hall of Fame quarterback on.
I like how you said, if we can get him on, as you wouldn't turn it down, as if like his camp would reach out to us.
I know. As soon as I said that, I knew how that
the rounds.
Yes,
his number one choice, the Scoop. Like he's a big fan.
I'm familiar with your work, guys. I know. As soon as that left my mouth, I thought, that didn't come out the way I wanted to. But
if the ghost of Queen Elizabeth wants to make an appearance on the Scoop, I'm not going to turn that down. Okay, like look, she's open door. The door behind me's closed.
Is that what you've been hearing?
That she wants to make an appearance?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd interview the Queen when she was still alive. So what are we going to talk about?
I don't know. We'd have to do it through a Ouija board, I guess.
I asked her like why the world was black and white back in the day. And she's like, that was just like color photography wasn't around, right? Sorry about that, Betty.
That would send the Scoop in a different direction. Anyway, we'll have a full stop on.
For you.
Yes.
Did you saw the clip of Heisler Miller in the pro run, right?
Yes.
Him hitting the jumper against Toby Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Does that encourage you more about Heisler Miller or discourage you about the Sixers?
Great question. I think it encourages me more about Heisler Miller. Like I was talking to a couple of people about this, and again, I don't know, and I promise you, I'm not trying to take away from Fabe here, but I don't know how hard these guys are going in the pro run games. But I think generally speaking, the one thing that you can see, again, these are clips, but Heisler looks awfully confident in his jumper and getting it over people who are taller than him. You saw like the clips of him shooting over Nate Pierre-Louis, and Nate is nuts about his defense and is hoping that's going to be his ticket to eventually getting to the league at some point. I mean, even if even if Tobias Harris is going at like 3/4 speed, I thought it was really impressive to see him just like shooting with confidence over him.
You know, it might just remind me of, and it actually kind of puts a bow on all of this. Do you remember, like, I guess it must have been June, Sam Cohn texted us and said he saw Elijah Warner, a fellow 5'10" person, just draining like 7 threes in a run at the pavilion.
Yes. Yeah.
Isaiah Miller, EJ Warner, gonna have some similar challenges. They have to be able to get their shot off above taller guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell, like I said, we'll be talking Temple hoops sooner rather than later. There are reasonable expectations for Temple to go to the NCAA tournament in Aaron McKee's 4th season.
I saw a stat today that of all like high major teams, which includes the American, I think Temple returns like the 9th or 10th most minutes from last year, which is impressive considering they lost Jeremiah Williams. So like I feel like we've been harping on we're focused on like the new key pieces they've added, and Shane Dezzoni and Jameel Reynolds and all that, but there's also just so much returning from last year.
Yes. I have to say in closing, before we close out the episode, loved your quote tweet of John Rothstein.
Look, I can curse that fucking guy. Like I really don't know how much of him is like a character. And if it is a character, then like you are the Christian Bale of tweeters. Like you are a method actor. You're really bought into this. I do think sometimes he just like occasionally it's like one of the moments where like, okay, he's in a coma and he's doing this, but every now and then he pops out and the real him shows. I think he realizes every now and then like this is ridiculous. I'm still just going to tweet it, and I think that was one of those.
Confidant on North College Street.
You nobody forced you to say the word confidant. You could have just said source. You felt the need, whether it's to puff your own chest out or to like kind of tongue in cheek it to say confidant, which by its very definition means that you're not supposed to be revealing what they tell you.
Yes,
but it's also just a cheat code for likes on Twitter. With like the people that follow me on Twitter, you take a shot at John Rothstein, there's 45 likes. You wake up, you take a shot at John Rothstein, you make 45 likes, you go take your morning dump, you start your day. It's a good day.
What a way to close out the podcast. But
John just did not show up on us.
Just running late from a meeting here with the Temple news. But we will have Javon Evans with us next week. We'll be back next week to talk to you about whatever happens between Temple and Rutgers, whatever football and basketball recruiting news we might have as well. And
it's the Cal Gauss media tour this week.
Yeah.
Find me all over the radio dials this week, including you. Don't you have a Pat Egan thing coming up?
Yes. Do the weekly hit with Pat Egan. That's not live on the air, but that is on the Fanatics website that's posted every Friday or mostly Fridays. So we'll be recapping the Temple Lafayette game, what Temple's going to be facing against Rutgers. And we'll be back with you next week. Thanks for all the mailbag questions, and we'll talk to you guys soon.